Remember, my excellent drivers, you are responsible for the safe use of your vehicle and abiding by the state or territory rules that you are driving in, and that, of course, includes mobile phone usage.
Welcome to the Learn to Drive podcast. I'm your host, Liz Lafferty, and I'm here to guide you through the twists and turns of learning to drive with a few laughs along the way. So whether you're a newbie trying to figure out why the car keeps beeping at you, or a seasoned road warrior who still can't parallel park without causing a minor traffic jam, I've got you covered. So buckle up, check those mirrors, and let's hit the road to becoming a more confident and happier driver. Hello and welcome to the Art of Confident Driving. I'm here with the lovely Dr. Amanda Stevens, the Senior Research Fellow with Monash University Accident Research Centre. She's very kindly come back and had a chat with us. Today we're going to be talking about driver anxiety, anxious drivers. There's a few more of us out there than there used to be. So let's see if we can pick the very clever doctor's brain and find out what's causing that and what we can do about it. All right, welcome, Amanda. Thank you so much for joining us again.
Well, thanks, Liz. Thanks for having me on again. I was thrilled to be invited back.
Oh, hey, with the amount of knowledge you've got, I would have you back every day of the week, but you are so busy, so I can't push my luck on that one. But no, thank you so much. So I'm noticing as an instructor, I'm getting more students who have anxiety when they're learning to drive and just obviously in general. I imagine that would also translate to more drivers on the road who are also feeling anxious about driving. Is that something that you've noticed in your research?
Absolutely, Liz. We notice now more than ever, people are saying they do become anxious while driving. And in fact, we've actually done a fair bit of work to understand factors associated with different levels of driving anxiety. So, what we find is that roughly about a third of drivers, when we ask them, will say they have some level of mild anxiety. Then sort of about half will say all moderate levels. And then right up the top, about 13-14% of drivers will actually
Wow.
have some form of extreme anxiety while driving. Now, they're mainly people who are driving and have been driving for a while. So
Okay.
I'm not sure how that would translate to young learner drivers as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if that would be an even higher statistics there.
Yeah, I'm going to put my hand up and say yes. Learning to drive is already stressful enough. It shouldn't be, but it is. But yeah, if the experienced drivers are feeling that level of anxiety, it's definitely translating down to the younger generation. So, what sort of things are they feeling anxious about?
There's a lot of different things happening out there. One really interesting study that we were involved in quite some time ago now, we actually looked at young novice drivers, so drivers who were in the first 100 days of getting their license.
Yeah.
And this was a study that was based in Victoria. And we had a sample of close to 24,000 freshly licensed drivers. And we asked them a lot of questions about how safely they felt they could drive and different types of driving. So, how safely could you, or how much could you choose safe speeds or safe gaps or safe following behaviors? And it was fantastic because most of the drivers within their first 100 days felt that they were really good, confident drivers. They felt that they had great intentions to drive safely. They felt that they were trained well to be able to perform these in a really good way.
Good.
The exception was that when other drivers were being aggressive,
Yeah.
or when they were under time pressure, or when the weather perhaps wasn't great, so particularly if it was wet, a lot of drivers felt they just could not drive safely. So their speed management, their gap selection, and their following behavior was really influenced under certain conditions. Despite the fact that they all had great intentions to drive safely,
Yeah. Yeah.
pressure from other people or other situations really influenced that. So there's some of the key situations that were really coming out for, yeah, very, very fresh drivers.
And they, of course, statistically have got the worst crash rate in their driving careers. It's the first 6 months of driving, of gaining that provisional license that, yeah, statistics clearly show it's the most dangerous time. So I'm glad they're
Absolutely.
confident.
Yeah.
I'm glad they're confident, but I'm not so glad that, they're like, "Oh, time constraint." Because the first thing I say to all my students when they're passed, I say, "Congratulations, well done. Please be advised the first 6 months are scary. I don't want you to become a statistic, so leave 5 minutes earlier. Leave 10 minutes earlier."
Absolutely. And it was quite a high, for us, it was quite a high prevalence. I think it was about 40% said they couldn't choose a safe speed when
Wow.
they were under time pressure. And it's about another 30%, yeah, when other drivers were being aggressive,
Yeah.
really influenced their behavior. I think what's super interesting about that, Liz, as well, is that we asked these drivers about whether they felt pressure from their peers to
Yeah.
perhaps drive less safely or whether they felt pressure from other drivers.
Yeah.
And it really emerged that there wasn't a huge amount of peer pressure for
Right.
unsafe driving, which
Okay.
sort of goes against some of the more older literature. So these drivers felt, no, no, I'm great with my peers. It was other drivers. They felt a
Mhm.
huge amount of pressure. So when there is that perceived pressure to
Mm.
perhaps make choices that they wouldn't normally want to make, it's
Yes.
from the other drivers on the road. And that comes through very much in the anxiety work that we do as well. It's that, particularly those people who have moderate levels of anxiety, a lot of that's driven by their concern about other
Yes.
drivers driving too close, what
Yeah.
other drivers are going to think about them if they drive too slow. So the role of other drivers is really critical in that early licensing, but
Yeah.
also when it comes to driver anxiety.
100%. I've had many students over the years who are fully licensed drivers. They're for some reason or another have lost their confidence. So they'll come back and see me. It could just be something like roundabouts they're struggling with, or often it's the freeway and motorways where they're really struggling. And that is very prevalent that I'm noticing they're so concerned about the people around them. I'm like, well, do you know these people? And they're like, "No." I'm like, "Would you ask them out for dinner?" And they said, "No." I said, "Well, why are you so concerned about them? You need to focus on what you're doing." And I see the change in them then. They're like, "Oh, yeah, of course. Why?" Like, awareness of them is wonderful. I wanna be aware of the cars around me, but to get distracted because I'm so concerned about somebody else's feelings or feeling pressured by those other road users, that's crazy. It's so illogical, but again, we're humans, we're gonna be emotional, but I do try and, sweep it to the side and keep it away from that sort of level of anxiety. It's like, let's not be so anxious. Let's just go out and enjoy the drive and focus on what we're doing. What have you guys found?
I think that's really important as well, is to shift that focus of attention away from who is that other driver, why are they doing that, what's happening, and particularly any judgment about or, any sort of perceptions of perhaps are they having a go at me, are they going to be angry at me? And again, focusing it on the task. And we've
Yeah.
we've found that in some driving simulator studies where if we ask people to focus on, well, how angry are you in this situation?
Mm.
Then people will get angry and they'll be a bit more aggressive. But if we ask people to focus on, okay, well, what's the level of difficulty? And they're changing their focus to think about how in control am I? What can I do? It actually produces a different behavior and a safer behavior. So
Wow.
that shift in focus
Yeah.
is really powerful, and we find that a lot with drivers. And I guess for people who are anxious too, it's about identifying what that source of anxiety is and then changing the focus or moving the strategy to identify with that. For people with moderate levels of anxiety who may get a bit stressed about what other people are thinking, that's perfect. Change the focus onto what you're doing.
Yeah. The other day I had actually, it was yesterday. Yesterday, I had a student in my car and I'm taking her twice a week. And I actually mentioned her in a previous podcast where she does have high anxiety. So it has taken us a good 25 or so lessons to get really good car control. And that's been a lot of repetition and a lot of the same routes over and over to build that confidence. And mum's helped out a bit with that, which is lovely. And yesterday, for the very first time, we went on the motorway. Oh, yeah. Yeah, the reaction was priceless. She was squealing with delight. So proud of herself that, we managed to get on the motorway happily. And she's like, I'm doing 105. I'm like, yeah, you are, baby. We're doing great. Yeah, I guess with the high anxiety drivers that sometimes they worry about the car control. So if they can get that confidence up in the quiet streets, and yeah, it's going to be a lot of repetition, but then they don't need to think about, how do I control the car if something goes wrong? You got this. You're already in place. And that's what I said to her. I said, look at all the hard work we did and look how it's paid off. You're on the motorway.
Well done. That's
Thank you.
fantastic.
Yeah.
That must have felt so great for her too, to
Oh,
be
yeah.
able to get out there
Yeah.
and yeah,
Yeah, you
yeah.
couldn't wipe the grin off her face. She was just, yeah, bubbling the whole way. And we got on and off quite a few times. I was really impressed. I thought I could only push her for one, but no, no, no. We then got off and had a little quiet bit and then back on again. And yeah, she did really well. So I can't wait to see her again this Friday. It's going to be exciting. We'll pop back on again. She already asked. She said, "Can we go back on?" I said, "Of course we can."
That's
So,
beautiful.
yeah, it's
And I
wonderful.
love that. It's that focus on what you can control. I think
Yes.
that's yeah, that's a it's a beautiful, beautiful thought for even beyond driving, really, Liz.
Yeah, exactly. Get the control, you'll feel comfortable and
Yeah.
confident. Yeah.
Yes.
So apart from directing them back to the task at hand, is there any other hints we could use?
Yeah, so some of the work that we've done, and this is all very, it's all self-report work as well. So people who sort of put their hand up and say,
Yep.
I'm very anxious about driving, and sometimes they'll even choose not to drive and avoid driving. Sometimes that can be a part of more general anxiety as well. So that might need, more clinical interventions there. But what we find is the concern for a lot of people with high driving anxiety is less of a focus about other people and more on a focus about I'm going to lose control of myself. So I'm going to
Okay.
have a panic attack while I'm driving. I'm
Mhm.
going to start shaking. I might not be able to control the car. So their focus is a little bit different as well. And
Mm,
that can be embedded more in instilling confidence. And again, it's working through where's that onset of anxiety coming from? If it's
right.
part of a bigger picture, then do you need to sort of deal with the bigger picture?
Yeah.
But also, a lot of people, when we ask, well, what help would you like? A lot of people say would like some driver training that focuses on anxiety and helps
Yes.
us work through anxiety. So there's definitely in our research people out there who want their instructors to help them with that level of anxiety as well. And I don't know if that's what you're finding too, Liz,
Well,
if that comes up with you.
yeah, when I have a chat with my instructor mates, we're all saying how many more students we're getting with anxiety. And it's only us who've been doing the job for a long time. We can teach and deal with the anxiety at the same time. But it is getting harder and harder. I almost, think, should I go get a degree in psychology or something? I'm like, my goodness, this really is affecting how I can teach. We're often having to pull over and calm down. And, I'm always happy to pull over and calm down. I say that to my students all the time. But it's you can see the physical changes in the student where they're really getting quite emotional and worked up. And it's that calming down business that we've all learnt to do. So yeah, it's tricky. It is tricky, especially, we're trained to be instructors. We're not trained to be psychologists. So it's a tough one.
Yeah, and it can manifest from a range of different ways as well. We had a look at in our sample of drivers who said they had anxiety. We sort of asked, well, where has this come from? And it can come from different places. So for some people, it can be fear of a crash, or
Yeah.
maybe they know someone who's had a crash, or they've heard of a crash. So it can be crash related.
Yep.
But for other drivers as well, it can be related to the fear that, well, some of their passengers may criticize their driving, or they may
Yeah.
have been criticized by a passenger or perhaps a parent, or so that can be a source of anxiety as well. So it's really interesting to be able to unpack that, and then that can help with moving forward.
Yeah, when you said criticism from other passengers, I'm like, well, that's my job. Uh, so as that's my job is to say, okay, we can do that one a little bit better. I don't like correcting. I like training into the proper procedures. It's a much more pleasant way of teaching instead of saying, no, 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 you did that wrong. I'd first of all train them into it. But you make a good point. I haven't, been a regular passenger in years. And yeah, it occurred to me, would I whinge to my girlfriend if she was a tailgater? I don't know that I would. She is. I love her. She does tailgate a bit. Not intentionally, and that see, again, and then this is the other thing, not all drivers are doing things intentionally. We were just chatting, and she naturally got closer to the car in front, and I'm like, "Oh, okay. I don't have a brake here, but that's okay. She knows what she's doing." So all of this is running in my mind. I'm like, "No, no, too close, too close." But I mean, yeah, I guess it's 100% on my students that they'll say, "Oh, mum told me I did that wrong," or "Dad, yelled at me for this one." So I utterly expect it from parents and supervising drivers because, they're trying to do some teaching methods. But it's I didn't even it doesn't occur to me that regular passengers would say something. But yeah, of course that would be off-putting if somebody's giving you a hard time about something. You're like, "Oh, gee, am I really that bad?"
Do you know,
Wow.
I love your point about the tailgating too, because I think that's true. We did a survey on tailgating some time ago, and we asked people, "Have you ever been tailgated?" And 100% of our respondents said, "Yes, I've
Yeah.
been tailgated." And then we sort of said, "Well, have you ever been in a situation where you've driven a bit too closely?" And about 70% actually said, "Yeah, I've also driven too closely." But sometimes they'll say, "Look, it was unintentional. I was in traffic or I hadn't realized and then I backed off."
Yeah.
And then other people where, as you can expect, I drove too closely because I wanted them to move over. They were,
Yeah.
there was a judgment there. So it can be intentional and unintentional.
Yeah.
Interestingly, we also asked people, okay, well, what's the recommended, following distances, in
Oh,
particularly in relation to timing?
yes.
What gap is it? And it's only about 50% of our people that actually knew what the recommendations were for following distances. So with tailgating, which is one of those examples that can lead, it's a highly anxiety provoking
Yes.
behavior, and it can provoke anger as well. So it can have a knock on effect to the
Yep.
person being tailgated. In a lot of situations, it can come down to just not understanding those following distances. And even if you know them, how do you translate those while you're actually driving?
Yeah.
What rule of thumb do you have? What do you use? And
Yeah.
is that actually working? So that's one of those tricky behaviors that I think can have a lot of misconceptions.
I'm not gonna lie, Amanda, I am amazed it was 50%. When I asked my learners what sort of safety bubble, as I call it, or gap between
Yep,
yourself
yep.
and the vehicle in front, I wouldn't get a 50% correct answer. I'd be lucky to get a 30% of my students who know the correct answer. And I've even got my, notes in front of them. And if they, actually read them a little bit, they'd see it, although it's from New South Wales, which is a 3-second gap. But yeah, up here in Queensland, it's a 2-second gap. And these guys have just finished the Prep L, the theory part of their licensing. And, they probably forget half of the road rules they've just learnt. So, yeah, I'm impressed that you got a 50%. That's actually I'm well done to all of those participants. Yeah, as Amanda has pointed out, it can be hard to judge. Queensland have got a fabulous little video. Now, again, Queensland rules can be different to your state. Please check with your state and territory rules before you just jump in and go. But yeah, ours here in Queensland is 2-second gap, not 2 car lengths, as many people think it is. 2 car lengths might be great at 50k an hour, but it's not going to be great at 100k an hour. And that's what that following distance is all about. What if the car in front has to go on the brakes heavy? Do you have enough space to stop happily? And tailgating is a definite hard no. And reminding ourselves this is the number one cause of accidents worldwide, isn't it? Number one cause of crashes is a rear end collision. Yeah.
And also having people tailgate, we have evidence to show that it can lead to anxiety, and it can be a situation that when you've got really confident drivers, they still feel they can't drive safely in those
Yeah.
situations. So, yeah, it's a huge issue.
Yes. I actually I I don't want to make somebody feel bad. I did see a learner this morning on my morning walk with the dog, and they were going maybe 30 kilometers an hour in a 50k zone, and they were getting so badly tailgated, 3 cars banking back behind them. And then I actually saw 2 of the vehicles overtake over a solid white line to get around this learner driver. I'm like, "Oh dear, none of that was good." So, I guess as a driver trainer, I'd also say to people, "Look, be aware of your speed. If you're doing 10, 15, 20 under the speed limit, well, I hate to say it, but you are actually asking for that trouble. If you're not capable of doing the speed limit, then go to a quieter street and do a bit more practice. Get the confidence up in the quieter streets, then make your way out to the busier ones." But yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people aren't really mindful of. They're just kind of driving, and if they feel comfortable at this speed, then I'm comfortable, and that's the end of it. Whereas the other people saying, "Well, hang on a second, you're 10 under the speed limit, buddy."
Yeah, and it
Um,
can it can be an aggression anxiety feedback loop as
Yeah.
well. So if somebody's a bit anxious and they're reducing their speed because they're a little bit anxious, that can lead to aggression from other drivers, which can then increase the anxiety and it becomes this vicious cycle.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And I often say that there's a ripple effect that can track all the way down the fleet. If you've got a driver who's being angry and aggressive, then they can, do something to another driver. They might become more anxious, change their behavior, which will then influence another driver's behavior, or they might become more angry and change their behavior as well. So it can knock on, can have a flow throughout the traffic.
Yeah, definitely a ripple effect because you can see it. I saw it in the drivers who overtook that learner. I'm like, "Oh, well, the first one was a P plater. Don't get me started." The overtaking on a solid line, I mean, that kid knows better. Anyway, he chose it and I could see his little face was very angry, and then the next car, they took longer than the P plater to go around. I'm like, "Are you actually gonna make it before you go to the roundabout?" They just snuck in front of the learner in time, but I'm like, "See, again, it's because of one thing, it rippled out and could have made a much more difficult and dangerous situation just because it's
Absolutely.
it's preventable. I think that's the thing that I'm most concerned about on the roads. Most problems are preventable. We just choose to ignore them instead of choose to notice them and then fix them, don't you think?
No, absolutely, absolutely. And I think a big part of it can come down to driver themselves thinking about, well, are there specific situations when I'm a little bit more worried? And that could be I might be a little bit angrier or I might be a little bit more anxious about and really identifying what it like some of your learners that come to you, Liz, and say, look, for me it's roundabouts.
Mhm.
Um, we've found a lot of people we've spoken to parking is another
Okay, yeah.
issue and some people will be so anxious about parking that they won't want to offer to drive with their friends somewhere because they know that, well, I'm going to want to park, a
Yeah.
little bit far away from the venue and they feel self-conscious about that. So it's identifying what those situations are and then yeah, working from there. So in your case, people are coming to you and saying, help me with this roundabout or help me with the
Definitely.
parking.
Yeah,
Um,
parking, yeah.
for someone else, it might be parking assistance tech. So some people will say, "Look, if I have that tech, I feel better."
Yeah.
So finding what that is and how you can work forward from that, because everyone's situations will be different. For me, right-hand turns.
There
They're
you
my
go.
least favorite thing to
Least
do.
favorite.
So I like a signalized turn.
Okay. I was about to
So
say, so we're talking right turn at lights when the arrow comes off? Yeah, with the
I'll choose, yeah, I'll try to choose a signalized turn.
yes, okay. Okay, fair enough.
So it's finding that, yeah, if there are things particularly that make you sort of anxious or angry, working out what those are and then making steps forward to try to work around that can
Yes.
help.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that people feel anxious about, certainly experienced drivers, would be traveling somewhere new where they haven't driven before. So the first thing I say to them is get out your street directory. And if you don't have a good old-fashioned street directory, get out Google and plan the trip. Don't just get in the car and hope that Google will send you in the right direction. She once tried to get me to do a U-turn on the motorway, for goodness sake. So not reliable. So that's why, sit at home, go scroll through, map it out, write it out if you need to. I'm turning left at these lights, I'm turning second on my right. I mean, we used to do that, didn't we? When we were younger, there was no such thing as a GPS.
Would you remember down in Melbourne, we had the good old Melways,
Melways,
which,
yeah.
and you'd have like a 4-page journey and you'd have to like be pulling over and flicking to the next page and
Yep.
working down the J8 grid where you needed
Yeah,
to
yeah,
be.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But that's not the road, hang on. Oh, it's E8. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I used to do map lessons. I'd like to actually incorporate that back into the curriculum again because, one day the internet will go down and then we'll be in trouble. Everybody will be just stopped on the motorway going, which exit am I taking? It
So
yeah.
we've worked with some people as well who've done, they've charted out the route, but they've also used the street view. So they can have a look, oh, I'm going to have to turn at that. I'm going to have a quick look and see what that looks like. So they can get their
Yes.
head familiar with where they're going, which is,
Yes.
yeah, I think that can be really helpful.
No, brilliant. Yes. I have so many students who have literally no clue and they're 5 minutes away from their home. And I say, well, do you know that Hungry Jack's? They're like, yeah. I like, well, there you go. There's a landmark. So, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
brilliant idea. Of course, you can use Of course you can use map view now. Yes, of course. Street view, sorry. Map. You see, I'm so used to maps. My brain's still stuck in the 80s. That's at least I can find my way around without, GPS generally. Okay, so again, folks, nobody's perfect. There is no such thing as a perfect driver. When we first moved to Brisbane, so we're originally on the other side of Brisbane, I was driving around Brisbane and I didn't have the street directory. We just got there and I hadn't bought one yet. And yes, this is pre-GPS. And I ended up having to pull over not once but twice in tears because I missed my turn off because the signs were at the turn off, not prepping them. So, we all have anxious moments. I mean, I was probably just having a really bad day, full stop. It takes a lot for me to get upset on the roads. But, exactly. Everybody gets upset, don't we? And it's how we tackle that problem, especially when we're driving. And I think, again, the smartest thing you said, smartest thing I've said, pull over. Don't just keep driving.
And I think, Liz, you touched a really good point there too. Like we drive as we feel.
Yeah.
So if we're generally having a bad day, when
Yeah.
we get in that car,
Yeah.
that is going to influence how we drive. And I know sometimes I've had to get up early for an early flight and I'll be sort of tired and anxious because I'm rushing late to the airport. And I know that this is going to influence my driving. And it's trying to compartmentalize how you feel with how you perform. And that's what came through in our big survey. When people were under time pressure,
Yeah.
they found driving to be harder. So
Yeah.
yeah, it really does bleed in.
So there you go, folks. I think that's the biggest lesson we've had today is A, stay calm, B, try and be in a good mood if you're going to be behind the wheel, and C, know where you're going and plan the route and don't get so caught up in what are other people thinking because it's not really going to affect you. Not really. You just think it might, but it won't. Don't you think? We all worry
I
too.
love that. It's true. It's very true. And I love, as you said, Liz, yeah, just focus on what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because that's what matters. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what matters is you behind the wheel staying safe and getting from point A to point B without any dramas. So, yeah, worry more about what you're doing and a whole lot less about what the others are doing. Oh, Miss Amanda, as always, we have a great time when we chat. We'll have to come back and do it again. I know you're off on a big trip overseas to talk about more road safety, so I cannot wait to have you back when you're on your way back and we can learn all new stuff again.
Oh, fantastic. I look forward to round 3.
Round
Liz.
3, you're on. You're on round 3 against anxious drivers and aggressive drivers, and yeah, we'll definitely do something. All right, thank you so much, Amanda. We really appreciate it, and safe journey on your trip.
Thanks, Liz. Anytime.
Thanks. And my full driving lessons are available on Apple Podcasts and the artofconfidentdriving.com website, where you will get access to instructional videos. Remember to relax and enjoy the drive. See you next time.